It all begins in the Western lands, a place called Maduro. 4 years have passed since Emperor Cardian took the throne. Since then, the empire began systematically conquering neighboring kingdoms. And in the middle of this war, there was a mercenary who had his past. His red eyes carried a story that no one knew. Years earlier, this young man's life changed when his father gave him an order. Point blank, his father said he would have to get married. Completely confused, the boy asks what that meant. His father then reveals that the bride is Baron Weebin's 16-year-old daughter. He describes her as a beautiful young woman whose only hobby is gardening. With that, his father says she would make a good wife for him. And just like that, at only 14 years old, the young man was engaged to a complete stranger. He could not believe his destiny had been decided that way. The boy simply could not accept the idea of an arranged marriage. On the day of the ceremony, he still could not understand his father's decision. He wondered why such a distinguished noblewoman would marry into his family. After all, they were just an ordinary family of merchants. At that moment, the bride turns to him and says it is a pleasure to meet him. She then formally introduces herself as Tyria Wibin. Soon after, the young man's father asked Elric to introduce himself as well. Eric bows shyly and says he hopes for a good life by her side. The boy's mind was a complete mess with all of this. But one thought became clear: he would spend the rest of his life with her. And looking back, he realizes that feeling was his very first love. He tries to hide the silly smile that insisted on taking over his face. During the ring exchange, he had to hold back from laughing out of pure joy. The young man was completely blinded by the emotion of that moment. He did not realize that somehow he might be hurting Tyria. After the wedding, they went to the mansion on a rainy night. Inside the room, the candlelight created a special atmosphere. He looks at the ring on his hand, still not believing what happened. It finally hits him that dignified and elegant woman was now his wife. However, the memory of his father's words still bothered him. A smile forms on his face, but doubt still consumed him. He thinks to himself that none of it made any sense. So he asks the maid why a noblewoman would marry him. The maid, named Rhonda, looks nervous and hesitates to answer. Without wasting time, Eric insists she tell him the whole truth. Even so, Rhonda stays silent, not knowing what to do, until she finally answers, leaving the young master in shock. The maid reveals that Tyria's family was broke and drowning in debt. The boy's father then made a deal to pay it all off in exchange for the marriage. With this union, Eric's merchant family would be elevated to nobility. The boy then asks if Tyria was sold to them, and Rhonda stays quiet. Shocked by the truth, the young man refuses to believe what he just heard. He is terrified to realize what his father had done to the girl. Without thinking twice, he gets up and runs out of the room. He needed to explain himself. He needed to apologize to his new wife. Desperate, Eric runs through the hallways looking for her. He just wanted to find an excuse to ease the young woman's suffering. Out of breath, he finally reaches her bedroom door. The boy leans against the wall, trying to regain his composure. His physical exhaustion was nothing compared to the ache in his chest. With his heart in his hand, he slowly approaches the door. But at that moment, he hears a sound coming from inside the room. Peeking through the crack in the door, he hears the sound of someone crying. And that was when he saw his wife silhouetted, completely devastated. Tyria was sitting on the bed, all alone, crying endlessly. The young man is paralyzed, seeing the sadness in the girl's eyes. At that moment, seeing her cry, Eric simply freezes in place. And he swears to himself that he will annul that marriage at any cost. Meanwhile, Eric's father was in his office, completely indifferent. The young man then goes back to the office and confronts his father. Without hesitating, he yells the name of the man who ruined his happiness. Eric begs his father to cancel the marriage immediately. He asks if Tyria was really sold to their family. Desperate, the boy pleads for a solution to that situation. But his father just calls his name with a cold voice. With a furious look, he tells Eric to stop acting like a child. He goes on to say that they are nobles now, and he needs to act like one. His father's icy glare was like a knife to his chest. That scene reminded him once again of his sad reality. He was the child who, according to his father, caused his mother's passing during childbirth. To his father, he was just a target of resentment and a tool. Looking back, Eric leaves the office feeling crushed. He realizes that to his father, he was never anything more than an object. Broken-hearted, the young man makes a drastic decision to disappear. He would do it for Tyria and to ruin his father's plans. To do that, he would need to abandon his family name forever. And so, a new and uncertain journey began for the young boy. Alone in the rain, the young man walks aimlessly, leaving everything behind. As he walks, he wonders why Tyria was crying. Did she hate him because of that forced marriage? Doubts and guilt consumed him with every step he took. But he decides it does not matter, because he is leaving anyway. After a long time, he arrives at an imposing mercenary fortress. A strong, experienced man notices his presence and asks who is there. The man then asks if the boy can become a mercenary. With a determined look, the young man answers yes. And from that moment on, he introduces himself with his new name, Kasha. He left the name Eric Portman behind and lived on the battlefield for 10 years. Thus, the legend of the sword monster was born, a secret only Eric knew. He became a lone warrior wandering through war zones. With his armor and sword, he faced countless enemies. His eyes, once full of doubt, now shine with a red light. On a battlefield, he prepares to take on an entire army. All alone, Kasha faces the enemy troops without showing any fear. His sword glows with a powerful energy ready for combat. With a single move, he charges forward, unleashing a devastating attack. His stained face reveals the coldness of a warrior forged in battle. Years later, Kasha is in a tavern trying to lead a normal life. The bar owner watches him, noticing something different in the air. At that moment, a man using a cane enters the establishment. To everyone's surprise, it was Kasha, now with a more mature look. He limps across the room and all eyes turn to him. People recognize him as the legendary sword monster. Everyone whispers about his leg, wondering if he got hurt. The bar owner asks what happened and why he is limping. Kasha says it was just a battle injury, something common for him. While reading the newspaper, he reveals he will have to live like this for a while. But suddenly, he crumples the paper tightly, his eyes full of anger. The bar owner gets worried and asks if something happened. The warrior stares at the newspaper and his expression completely changes. The news was about the man he resented the most in the entire world. Without hesitating, Kasha hops on a train, setting off on a new journey. The train travels at high speed, taking him to an uncertain destination. Inside the train car, he reflects on the memories that haunt him. He saw his father's face printed in a small note in the newspaper. It was Hovan Portman, the man responsible for all his pain. And he remembers that, when he ran away, he still had hope his father would look for him. He was only 14, with a childish and naive hope in his heart. But looking back, he feels that belief was not entirely baseless. Even being treated like a tool and blaming his father for his mother. No matter what happened, deep down, he was still his son. In some corner of his heart, he just wanted a little affection, but now he laughs at that. It was all an illusion, and the target of his resentment is no longer around. Now, he feels like a coward for using his father's passing as an excuse to go back. With a deep emptiness, he returns to his hometown frozen in time. The train finally arrives in Webin, his only possible destination. Before him, golden wheat fields stretch out to the horizon. His red eyes stare at the scenery, heavy with memories. Even after 10 years, he realizes that absolutely nothing has changed. The quiet streets are still painted with the red of autumn leaves. That scenery was both familiar and completely foreign to him. A world totally different from the constant tension of the battlefield. Limping with his cane, he slowly walks through the streets of his childhood. A slight smile appears on his face as he takes in the peace of the place. Even the wheat fields, symbol of the Webin estate, remain the same. He remembers playing hide and seek with the village children, and also the scoldings he got from the maid for getting his clothes dirty. With each step, the memories of that place become more and more vivid. He then reflects on the memories that haunted him for so long. Suddenly, he stops walking, as if a memory had struck him. His expression changes and a specific thought takes over his mind. And that was when he remembered her, wondering how she was doing. He believes that with her beauty, she has certainly moved on by now. But deep down, a little hope still lingered in his heart. Just then, he hears a voice shouting her name. Turning around, he sees her right there, right in front of him after 10 years. The maid beside her gets nervous and offers to help. Kasha can barely believe it is really her, standing right in front of him. Ignoring the maid, Tyria starts walking toward him. He stands completely frozen, not knowing how to react to the scene. They stare at each other until she questions him about his presence there. With a serious expression, she asks why he decided to come back. He tries to smile, but before he can answer, she interrupts him. Tyria looks at him and says loud and clear that she is still his wife. In that instant, he realizes the magnitude of the mistake he made. He was naive to believe the marriage would be annulled just by him running away. After all, if it were an easy marriage to annul, she would never have been sold. He realizes his impulsive actions might have trapped Tyria forever. In the end, he could not do anything for the woman he married. Standing before her, he feels he could not even protect his own pride. He sees himself as nothing more than a cowardly and completely selfish man. While he lived as a warrior, she faced everything all alone. He imagines how difficult and lonely her life must have been. With that, he decides he needs to apologize no matter what it takes. But then he wonders if he has the right to do so, and if she will accept it. Not knowing how to start, he just stammers out meaningless words. Tyria stares at him with an unreadable expression, waiting for an answer. Breaking the silence, she simply invites him inside. She then turns and starts walking, expecting him to follow her. The young man watches her walk away, still lost in his own thoughts. He gets frustrated, wishing she had at least been mad at him. A dark voice echoes in his mind, reminding him that he abandoned her. The voice then questions him about what he really expects to find now. Startled by his own thoughts, he takes a step back. Fear and guilt take over his face, leaving him paralyzed. Meanwhile, Tyria continues on her way without looking back, until she stops, turns around, and asks if he is not coming with her. After a moment of hesitation, he finally pulls himself together. He says he is coming and follows her, walking side by side with her. When they reach the mansion, she says she will call the butler and tells him to wait. Tyria looks at him for a moment, as if she wanted to say something else, but she just turns and goes inside, leaving him alone outside. He watches her leave, and a strange feeling takes over his chest. He can barely believe it has been 10 years since the last time he was there. Everything in the mansion looked exactly like it did in his memories. Every detail, from the windows to the stains, came rushing back to him. A nostalgic smile appears on his face as he remembers everything. Suddenly, the maid he used to know shows up and asks who he is. He smiles, bracing himself for the reunion he waited so long for. The woman, with her flawless posture, asks who he came to see. In a cheerful tone, he calls her by her name, Rhonda. He points out that she hasn't changed a bit, even after 10 years. Joking around, he asks if she really does not recognize him. The maid stares at him confused, trying to figure out the situation, until suddenly her eyes widen in complete shock. With a trembling voice, she calls him young master, unable to believe it. She asks if it is really him, young master Elric, after all this time. With a smile, Eric hugs Rhonda and says he finally came back home. With tears in her eyes, she can barely believe it is actually him. She says he has changed so much she almost did not recognize him at first. He agrees, saying it is only natural she would not recognize him right away. But then, his red eyes shine with a sudden realization. He remembers Tyria's words, she recognized him instantly. A man who spent 10 years on the battlefield, completely changed. Seeing his expression, Rhonda asks if something is wrong with him. He thinks that even Rhonda, who was like a mother, took a while to know who he was. And that was when the big question he could not ignore popped into his heart. A wave of embarrassment and confusion washes over his face. How could she have recognized him at a glance, even with all the changes? Meanwhile, inside the mansion, the atmosphere was full of silence and expectation. Tyria was standing by the window, looking at the scenery outside. Through the reflection, she watched the conversation between Eric and Rhonda. Suddenly, he feels eyes on him and turns toward the window. Surprised to have been noticed, she gets startled and takes a step back. Her face turns red, and she tries to hide her unexpected reaction. And at that moment, she remembers a scar on his neck, and also the brown hair and those unmistakable red eyes. She realized that deep down, he was still the same boy from before. Later, Eric takes a bath to relax and organize his thoughts. But the same question keeps pounding in his head: how did she recognize him? The warm water relaxes his muscles but fails to calm his mind. After the bath, he walks out of the bathroom wearing only a robe. But at that exact moment, he realizes he is not alone in the room. It was Tyria standing right in front of him, wearing only a towel. Realizing the situation, her face turns completely red with embarrassment. Desperate, she apologizes, not knowing how to react. Tears start streaming down her eyes, and she tries to calm herself down. He tries to calm her, telling her not to cry, but panic takes over. In a quick move, he grabs her so she will not fall to the floor. Suddenly, the maid walks into the room and lets out a high-pitched scream. Startled, she trips and almost drops the basket she was carrying. The young maid yells, asking what is going on in there. She catches them in a compromising position and chaos ensues. The two awkwardly try to explain the situation, but it is too late. Tyria, still in shock, can barely call out the maid's name. Eric tries to play it cool, saying she just tripped and he caught her. Meanwhile, on the border defense line, an army gets ready. The war at the border was brutal, and a determined gaze watched everything. Leading the Imperial Army was LeBron, the feared Vanguard Knight. On the other side, the soldiers charge with orders to defeat the Vanguard. One of the enemy knights laughs and promises he will get rid of them all. But in the blink of an eye, the soldiers are swiftly defeated. His companions panic when they see they stand no chance against him. Because of this, the commander orders all units to retreat immediately. The soldiers run away in despair, trying to save their own lives. LeBron observes the lone warrior and wonders who that man is. It was Kasha, a young man who single-handedly managed to stop the entire enemy advance. His face showed the calmness and experience of a true veteran. Undeterred, the enemy knight charges forward to attack him directly. But Kasha blocks the strike with impressive ease. He stops the enemy's blade with his sword, showing off his superior strength. Right after, he counters with a surprising speed. The knight falls to his knees, completely shocked by the young man's power. Giving the enemy no time to react, Kasha prepares the final strike. With a powerful move, he defeats the knight once and for all. The remaining soldiers stand paralyzed with fear at that sight. Then the young man introduces himself as Kasha, a mercenary knight. He challenges the enemies, saying he will defeat anyone brave enough to step up. But suddenly, he feels a powerful presence and realizes something is coming. Without hesitation, he creates a mana shield to protect himself from the attack. A spear of red energy hits him squarely, sending him flying. Even hurt, he manages to get up with his leg bleeding badly. He looks to the horizon with an expression of pain and surprise. At the top of a mountain, two mysterious figures watched him. They were skilled hunters, geared up with special weapons and suits. The image of the battle haunts him and his red eyes widen. Suddenly, he wakes up in his bed, startled by the nightmare. His face is covered in sweat, and he tries to understand what happened. The dagger in his hand shows just how tense and real the dream felt. He looks around, recognizing the room and the safety of the mansion. With a sigh, he remembers he finally made it back home. But at that moment, the sound of knocking on the door breaks the silence. A maid asks if the master is already awake. He stays silent for a moment, still recovering from the nightmare. With a calm voice, he replies yes, that he just woke up. A disguised smile appears on his face as he hides the dagger. And so, a new day begins with the maid coming in to serve him. After the nightmare, the maid brings a basin of cold water for him. He puts on fresh, clean clothes, feeling the soft fabric against his skin. Looking in the mirror, he feels that all this luxury is earned. He tries to force a smile, but the look on his face is strange. It seems smiling no longer suits him after so much time in the war. Right then, Rhonda praises him and invites him to breakfast. With her usual posture, she prepares to guide him through the mansion. On the way, she asks about his leg, and he lies about the cause. The truth is he got shot, but he does not want to cause any worry. Rhonda jokes that he is still clumsy, and he says yesterday was a misunderstanding. But right at that moment, Tyria appears in the hallway, right in front of them. She looks at them with a serene beauty and unreadable expression. With a soft voice, she greets him and asks if he slept well. The memory of the embarrassing scene in the bathroom comes rushing back to his mind. With his face turning bright red, he feels like an absolute creep. To make matters worse, the other maid bows and calls him a creep out loud. Without hesitation, Rana scolds the young girl for spying in the bathroom. While Rana drags her away, Tyria hopes he enjoys his stay. Arik is left speechless, trying to clear his throat to play it cool. With a nervous smile, he answers that he slept very well, thank you. During breakfast, Eric asks about the new maid Marie. Tyria then asks if he is worried because she called him a creep. Feeling completely awkward, he says it is fine and she does not need to worry. He rests his hand on his cane, trying to keep his composure. He plays it off, saying he was just curious because he had never seen her before. With a suspicious look, Tyria stares at him in silence without saying a word. An awkward silence takes over the table while they eat. Even with the weird vibe, Tyria eats with a serene smile on her face, until she breaks the silence, bringing his attention to a certain topic. He then takes the chance to talk about the incident from the day before. Blushing, she asks if he means what happened in the bathroom. Before he can apologize, Tyria interrupts him and says it is perfectly fine. She just asks him to finish his breakfast, and he agrees without understanding. Even trying to look calm, Tyria's face was still flushed. The truth is the memory of the scene still made her incredibly embarrassed. In her thoughts, she remembers his name Eric. The image of him shirtless, with his scarred body, would not leave her head. She then wonders what kind of life he led to have so many scars. Meanwhile, the awkward silence between the two only grew. He regrets bringing it up and can barely handle the embarrassment. To escape the awkwardness, he starts eating desperately. Tyria is surprised to see him devouring the food to run away from the conversation. With his mouth full, he stands up, gives a thumbs up, and says he is leaving. Right after, he leaves the dining room as fast as he can. Seeing him leave, Tyria lets out a soft sigh, looking relieved. With a shy smile, she wishes him a pleasant day. After breakfast, Eric finds the mansion bustling with the staff. Guided by Rhonda, he greets the servants and is welcomed with open arms. But soon the staff starts gossiping about the scene in the bathroom. And to make matters worse, Marie shows up and calls him a creep. She cannot accept the other servants defending the young master. Marie yells that he came back after 10 years just to do that. But the butler scolds her, asking her not to be so hard on him. He then explains that a noble's main duty is to produce an heir. The butler says Eric was simply being faithful to his noble duty. Even with the explanation, Marie is unconvinced and calls him a creep. The butler then asks if he returned to stay and fulfill his duty. Eric laughs awkwardly and says he has not decided his next move yet. He explains he cannot simply act like the master of the house. Not knowing what to say, he says goodbye and tells them they need to talk later. With a serious look, Eric asks the butler to prepare the carriage. Soon after, the butler takes him through the wheat fields toward his destination. From afar, Tyria watches the carriage slowly pull away. With the wind blowing through her hair, she watches him leave in silence. The carriage gets further and further from the mansion, leaving everything behind. Upon arriving, Eric steps down and walks alone down a path of dry leaves. He says to himself that it has been a very long time since he was last there. Before him, his father's memorial stone stands out against the blue sky. With a heavy heart, he admits the deep resentment he used to feel. But he never wished for their reunion to be this way. His father was a ruthless man who turned the family into a guild. He wonders if his father ever smiled or said a kind word. In his thoughts, he says his father should have lived a little longer. The young man stares at the stone, with autumn leaves falling around him. With a new perspective, he says he no longer holds that same resentment. He then calls the butler, Aldio, who is waiting at a distance. Eric asks how his father passed away, and the butler reveals the truth. Aldio says the master hid his illness until the end, and only he knew. The butler shares that in his final days, he liquidated all his businesses. Eric then questions what he saw that was so good in such a cold man. With a smile, the butler answers it was for the money, obviously. But Eric notices something odd in the answer and gives him a questioning look. Aldia then reveals that the entire inheritance was left to him. Eric stays silent, processing the unexpected information. And all that fortune now belonged to the young master of the house. On the way back, the carriage drives along a tree-lined road. Back at the mansion, Eric asks if his father left a will. Aldio says the master was not the type to do that, and there are only instructions. He claims he does not know the true intentions behind the decision. Eric's father handled this matter more coldly than ever before. The butler then advises him to think calmly about the inheritance. And that is when Eric's red eyes focus on a new mystery. He remembers Tyria, and a question pops into his mind. He wonders why she was still at the mansion, even after he ran away. Aldio explains it was a political marriage, a business transaction. Eric asks if that is reason enough, but the butler has more to say. He reveals that with the inheritance, the Baron title will pass to Eric, and that the entire inheritance belongs to him, not to Tyria. After the conversation, the carriage finally arrives back at the mansion. Eric realizes that if it were for the money, she would have no reason to stay. The butler says Tyria chose to stay of her own free will. Surprised, Eric asks if he knows the reason behind this decision. Aldio answers she is not a woman of many words and they are not close. He describes her as a distant noblewoman who is hard to get close to. Eric agrees, but Aldio reminds him she is his wife, not a stranger. With a smile, the butler says every marriage starts out that way. Soon after, Eric walks up the stairs, his doubts still lingering in his head. And to his surprise, he finds Tyria standing in the hallway. Her hat hides part of her face, but he recognizes her. Her hands clasp together, and the wedding ring shines on her finger. She turns and starts walking, and he follows her without saying a word. Seeing him, she asks if he is already back from visiting the cemetery. Surprised, she tries to play it cool and asks when he got there. She then says she just got back from the wheat field. A faint blush takes over Eric's face from being so close to her. Awkwardly, he invites her inside and she accepts the invitation. They enter the mansion, walking up the stairs in an awkward silence. He curses himself for not being able to hold a normal conversation with her. And he notices that, even in simple clothes, she still looks very noble. Then he wonders if she was already like this 10 years ago, on their wedding day. The memory of their first meeting comes back to his mind clearly. Distracted by his thoughts, he trips and almost falls to the floor. Worried, Tyria steps closer and asks if he is alright. He uses his cane to support himself, trying to hide his loss of balance. He says he is fine, but wonders how long she was watching him. Embarrassed, he apologizes for not being able to help her carry the bag. He feels like a failure offering apologies after all this time. Tyria stares at him for a moment, as if she were processing his words. She then explains she got used to the work, learning from his father. He agrees, saying that was his father's way of doing things. He remembers that his father inspected everything personally, even the wheat fields. Now, with the businesses liquidated, only the wheat farm remained. Suddenly, Tyria stops walking and he stares at her, waiting. He uses the moment to ask a question that had been bothering him. Looking at a portrait on the wall, he asks what his father's days were like. She answers that she learned the estate work from him, and nothing else. His hand grips the cane, feeling the tension in the air. With a hint of hope, he asks if his father ever talked about him. Point-blank, Tyria replies no, he never mentioned his name. And he concludes that any conversation between them was nothing more than business. With a sigh of resignation, Eric accepts the harsh reality about his father. Tyria then says goodbye, saying she needs to attend to her duties. Confused, he questions her, and she reveals she still has paperwork to review. He is surprised to learn she works during the day and handles papers at night. She says goodbye and tells him she will see him again at dinner, leaving him deep in thought. Alone, he reflects on their conversation and the life she had led. A wave of guilt washes over him when he realizes he left her with everything. He feels even worse knowing she never once complained about the situation. With a heavy step, he continues on his way, lost in thought. But just then, he hears a noise and turns to see what happened. It was Marie, who tripped and fell, dropping a stack of letters. Desperate, she wonders what to do, completely lost. Eric offers to help and asks what all those letters are for. She reveals they are letters for Tyria, and he is surprised by how many there are. He picks one of the letters up, and an ironic smile appears on his face. But when he sees the sender, his eyes widen in complete shock. The letters were from Weebin, Tyria's family, to their beloved daughter. Intrigued, he sits down to read the contents of one of them. The letter was from her father, asking her to return and find a new husband. And he realizes how resentful she must have felt about all of this. He realizes taking the inheritance would be a fair price for everything she went through. And he wonders if she stayed because of his father's legacy. But a cruel doubt pops into his mind and his red eyes glow. He sits at his desk trying to piece everything together. A look of suspicion takes over his face as he thinks it over. If her goal was the inheritance, she could have taken it all a year ago. He stands up, determined to find the truth behind it all. Opening the drawer, he finds the letters and confirms his suspicions. All the letters started arriving a year ago, right after his father's passing. And they all asked for the inheritance, but she never replied to a single one. With a sigh, he finally understands what was going on. She was protecting the legacy for a master who might never return. And since not even Aldio knew, she kept this secret very well. This means that for an entire year, she fought this battle completely alone. Faced with this revelation, his image of Tyria gains a new strength. He wonders why she chose such a difficult life for herself. Meanwhile, in her room, Tyria gets ready for dinner. She ties her hair back with a ribbon, wearing a serene expression on her face. Wearing a blue dress, she looks at herself in the mirror, ready for the evening. The maid watches her and says that, finally, everything is going to change. Excited, she cheers that the young master finally asked to see her. Even thinking his behavior was shameful, she remembers the butler's words. And she wonders if having hair would not be good for Tyria too. Confused by the maids jumping around, Tyria does not understand the excitement. Without hesitation, Marie grabs her lady's dress with determination. She gets on her knees and begs Tyria not to miss this chance. The maid says Eric is a creep and might run away again. She insists Tyria should take advantage and have a baby with him. Tyria just smiles at the maid's excitement and her ideas. Just then, knocks on the door interrupt the girl's conversation. It was the butler, letting her know it was time to go to her meeting with Eric. The two walk side by side, with Tyria wondering what he wants. After all, this was the first time he had asked for a formal meeting. The butler opens the parlor doors, revealing the scene on the other side. With a firm voice, he announces the arrival of the lady of the house. Eric welcomes her with a simple welcome, and she steps into the room. With a slight bow, she greets him and sits across from him. He watches her every move, and the tension in the air is thick. He takes a sip of his tea, trying to break the awkward silence. And so, the two stare at each other, ready for the conversation that would change everything. He starts by apologizing for opening the letters without permission. Right after, he questions her directly about the contents of the letters. Surprised by the question, Tyria is left unsure of how to answer. With her head down, she tries to hide the look on her face. She fears he will misunderstand her intentions and see her as a gold digger. He reveals he knows she ignored the letters for an entire year. Then he asks why she protected the inheritance with no guarantee he would return. He insists, saying she could have taken it all for herself. To him, she was still a complete stranger, someone he did not know. And because of that, her protection over his inheritance was a huge mystery. He asks why she did not go back to her family like the letters asked. With a firm voice, she reminds him of the last name she now carried. She declares herself as Tyria Portman, the lady of that house. With that, she makes it clear she is no longer the lady of Wibben. After her statement, she stands up and says goodbye, saying she has work to do. She leaves him alone in the room, her words echoing in his mind. He watches her leave, still trying to understand what she meant. The two stare at each other one last time before she disappears down the hall. And the same question lingers in his head without a clear answer. After a long silence, she finally starts explaining herself. With her face flushed, she turns around and begins to explain the situation. With a trembling voice, she says she stayed because she is his wife. The image of the dagger comes back to his mind, and he grips the weapon tightly. He sits at his desk trying to process her words, and he finally understands the meaning behind her answer. He tosses the dagger on the table, the sound echoing through the quiet room. Her answer was about responsibility and duty as a noble. She protected it all out of duty, not for personal gain. And that attitude reminded him of Elvis Graham, a man he once knew. He was the third son of a noble family, and Eric was his mercenary. In the war, Elvis was injured and could never fight on a battlefield again. But he accepted his fate, saying it was to fulfill his duty. To him, being a noble meant carrying the weight of responsibility and setting an example. Eric reminded him he was half commoner, the son of a concubine. But Elvis replied that, as a half noble, he had already fulfilled half his duty. And that, for the rest of his life, he would live as a carefree slacker. Back in the present, Eric throws the dagger at the wall hard. He repeats the words responsibility and duty, now with a new meaning. He knows he cannot make up for the 10 years she sacrificed, but he can take action. And he knows more letters will arrive, and they cannot go down there. He knows she will not reply, because she is not the type to open up. Fortunately, there is a way to uncover the whole truth. Without wasting time, he takes a carriage and heads to the Wibben estate. Standing before the imposing mansion, he decides a direct approach is best. He admits the house is grand, but he feels confident in his approach. From inside the mansion, Baron Wibben notices the unexpected arrival. Furious, he complains about Eric's audacity to show up after all this time. His wife agrees, saying he only came back because of the inheritance. The Baron worries about the possibility of Eric claiming the inheritance. The Baroness, hiding her face with a fan, conceals her look of disdain. The two pace the room, planning how to deal with the situation. The Baron complains that Eric only cares about money and nothing else. The Baroness agrees, saying he made their daughter waste 10 years. With his eyes fixed on the inheritance, the Baron has a plan in mind. He says he needs to use that money to settle the score. But right at that moment, the sound of knocking on the door interrupts them. It was Elric who walked into the room without waiting to be announced. He formally introduces himself and apologizes for taking so long to greet them. The Baron, being sarcastic, comments that it was really hard to see him after 10 years. Without holding back, Eric reveals he saw the letters sent to the mansion. The Baron gets angry and says he sent the letters out of pity for his daughter. He throws it in Eric's face that he shamelessly abandoned Tyria. With a scornful smile, he says Eric has no right to the inheritance. He also claims the inheritance was managed by his daughter, not by him. Bluntly, the Baron reveals he is going to take the inheritance as payment. He accuses him of being shameless for coming back and claiming the money. The Baroness agrees, saying Elric is completely useless. They claim it would be better if they handled the inheritance themselves. Eric just lets out a sigh, tired of that disgusting conversation. With a look of disgust, he realizes their only goal is the inheritance. He understands they do not care about their own daughter, only the money. Feeling sickened, Eric realizes he cannot listen to those people anymore. With his head down, he gets ready to give his answer. He starts by apologizing for not bringing his wife along. Furious, the Baron interrupts him and tells him to stop changing the subject. Eric then questions him if it is fair for him to claim the inheritance. The Baron calls him greedy, and Eric can barely believe what he hears. With a threatening glare, he asks what they would do if he were greedy. He stares at the Baron and asks what he would do if he acted on greed. With a challenging smile, he provokes him, asking why he got quiet. In a quick move, he slams his hand on the table, startling the Baron. The Baron stammers, calling Eric insolent, not knowing how to react. With a smirk, Eric says he finally realized the truth. He reveals he spent 10 years on the battlefield and learned to be direct, and that even if he finds no sense in his actions, nothing changes. He then threatens the Baron, telling him to keep quiet if he wants the money. With an ironic smile, he says they are the greedy ones here. He then stands up, ready to leave and put an end to that conversation. The Baron threatens him, but Eric challenges him to try and do something against him. And with one last look, he turns and leaves the mansion without looking back. On the carriage ride back, he reflects on what just happened. With his hand on his face, he lets out a sigh of exhaustion and frustration. He feels like a shameless person, a sinner in Tyria's eyes. He wonders if he really acted for her own good in that situation, or if the whole thing was just an act of superiority on his part. He realizes he felt satisfaction in shutting the couple down with his words. His father's words about earning one's keep echo in his mind, and he concludes he is no different from his father, a selfish man. Suddenly, the butler stops the carriage abruptly. Eric's hand hits the wall hard, and he wonders what happened. Suddenly, Eric feels nauseous and steps out of the carriage to get sick. With sweat dripping down his face, he can barely stay on his feet. He leans against the carriage, feeling like a miserable human being. But at that moment, he hears a noise and turns to see what it is. He turns his head, trying to identify where the mysterious sound came from. With wide eyes, he can barely believe what he sees. It was Tyria holding a child in her arms, standing in the middle of the wheat field. She looks at him with serene beauty, the sun shining on her golden hair. He whispers her name, his voice trembling with emotion and surprise. Without a second thought, he starts running toward her. He wonders how much she suffered because of him, his father, and her parents. His chest fills with deep pain when thinking about all her suffering, and he includes himself on the list of people who made her suffer without mercy. He runs, thinking that everyone around her is her enemy. In a swift motion, he grabs her by the arm, with his heart on his sleeve. Surprised, she stares at him and asks what he is doing. He kneels before her with his head bowed in a gesture of pleading. With a choked-up voice, he apologizes for abandoning her for 10 years. He apologizes for everything she had to go through because of him. And with tears in his eyes, he admits it was all his fault. Here we see a memory from the past with the boy fending off some wild dogs using only a stick. With the animals running away, he turns to the girl asking if she is alright and if she did not get bitten anywhere. The young girl answers that she is fine, but quickly notices the hero's leg is bleeding a lot from the attack. The boy is shocked to see the bite mark on his leg and starts yelling at the wild animals for doing that. Seeing the situation, the blonde girl's cheeks turn red and she shyly asks him to come closer for a moment. Then she starts bandaging the injury while he introduces himself as Elric, saying she does not need to thank him. The hero tries to brag, claiming he will be a royal knight in the future and that it would be good for her to be nice to him. Even hearing all of this, the little lady stays quiet and just focuses on finishing the bandage on the boy's leg. She stands up, letting him know she finished the job, and the young man thanks her a bit awkwardly after seeing the fine work. Analyzing the girl, he comments that she looks like a noble but is very skilled at treating injuries. The girl whispers softly that her nanny always took care of her, and the boy complains, asking her to speak up. This loud behavior leaves the little blonde with a tired expression and a bit bothered by his tone of voice. Completely clueless, he tells her that with that shy personality, she would never manage to find someone to marry. Turning his face away in embarrassment, the boy says he could accept her as his wife when he became a royal knight. Hearing this sudden confession, the little noblewoman's eyes widen, feeling her heart beat much faster. Bright red, the boy loses his composure and starts yelling, saying he only wanted her around because of the healing. The young girl simply turns her back and walks away in silence, leaving the future knight annoyed for being ignored. However, while walking through the field, the little lady gives a slight smile, showing she enjoyed that interaction. Back to the present, we see Tyria affectionately holding a frame with a picture of that same boy. She looks at her beloved's image, remembering everything they lived through and how that old promise shaped her life. With a gentle smile, she thinks to herself that he did not become a knight, but considers their reunion to be the work of fate. Late afternoon arrives at the grand mansion, with the head maid asking to prepare tea for the couple. The blonde lady walks through the castle's long hallways, closely followed by one of her staff. The maid mentions that the master seemed to have a very heavy expression, and this makes his wife quite worried. With a heavy heart, the lady wonders why he called her to talk so suddenly. Reaching the room, the staff member knocks on the door, letting the young master know his wife has finally arrived. The two sit in armchairs facing each other in a somewhat tense and quiet atmosphere inside the huge library. Sweating cold, the beautiful woman takes the initiative, letting him know she has something very important to tell him. The hero gently interrupts her, revealing that he was actually the one who called her there to say something. With a look full of guilt and sadness, the husband looks deep into her eyes and offers his sincere apologies. This sudden speech takes the young woman completely by surprise, making her cover her mouth with her hands without understanding anything. The noble explains he wanted to apologize for leaving her alone at the mansion right on their wedding day. Closing his eyes, the boy confesses he was very foolish and impulsive back then, acting without thinking about the consequences. He acknowledges all the wounds and difficult moments the blonde had to endure entirely on her own over the years. The hero keeps his gaze steady and asks with all the sincerity in the world if she could forgive his mistakes. Still processing the information, his wife answers softly that the master's no reason at all to apologize. The beautiful lady assures him she never held a grudge and that continuing to live in that place was entirely her choice. But the husband insists, stating his heart would never find peace if things stayed that way. Feeling his sincerity, the young woman blushes deeply and gives a charming smile, saying she accepts his apologies. Hearing those words lifts a massive weight off the hero's shoulders, making him smile in relief at the situation. The boy thanks her from the bottom of his heart for accepting his apology and refers to her very politely. With the conversation over, the noble stands up using his cane and starts walking, accompanied by his wife. As they walk side by side, he shows concern, asking if the girl's leg was already feeling better. The woman apologizes for taking up his precious time, but he looks at her affectionately, asking her not to say that. At this point, the blonde stops walking and calls her husband's attention, who promptly asks her to speak her mind. Gathering all her courage, the beautiful lady turns red and asks if, instead of using formal titles all the time, she swallows hard and tries to form the sentence, feeling immensely embarrassed to keep saying what she really wanted. The hero cannot hear well and leans his face in, asking what she had just murmured. But at that exact moment, the door is forcefully opened by the maid announcing tea, hitting the master right on. The hit is so hard that the hero flies forward, losing his balance, while the blonde panics at the scene. Because of the impact, the boy ends up falling right on top of the blonde in a super awkward position. Just then, the butler and a little maid see the scene, and the old man immediately thinks they are trying to have a baby. Desperate, the hero yells that things are not like that at all. But the staff member covers the little girl's eyes, saying they should not see grown-up things. Giving a thumbs up, the butler says he will not let anyone bother the two. Completely awkward, the hero raises his hands while looking at his wife. Red with embarrassment, the lady covers her face and asks the master to get off her. The older man still peeks through the crack, telling them to take all the time they need. Right after that, the wooden door is quickly shut. During the night, outside the mansion, the boy keeps yelling that it was all a misunderstanding. The day dawns sunny, brightening the huge hallways of that place. A new staff member with glasses appears, asking if the master had coughed. Greeting the woman, the young man just wishes her a good morning. Looking at the boy, the servant notices he seems much better and asks if something happened the night before. Getting closer, the woman jokes about the news that an heir would be on the way. Laughing nervously, he denies everything, blaming the gossipy old man, and the maid thinks it is a shame. However, the mood gets serious and she warns that the events of the night cannot end as a simple coincidence. Confused, the noble asks what the lady means by that, and the staff member quickly changes her tone. Giving him a scolding, she reminds him his wife left alone for 10 years and asks him not to make her sad anymore. Meanwhile, the beautiful girl wakes up stretching in her giant double bed. Smiling, she feels much lighter and more refreshed than on any other day. Holding a framed picture of her husband as a child, the blonde mentally asks if he slept well. Touching the image, the young woman feels very happy, sensing that the distance between them has finally shortened. Raising her arms, the beautiful lady wonders if she should go say good morning to him from now on. The sun shines bright outside, illuminating the region's wheat fields. Sitting at the giant table, the lovebirds finally have breakfast together. The meal features toast, eggs, and bacon prepared with great care. Chewing her food, the boss looks at her beloved with a very passionate look. The hero, on the other hand, swallows hard, finding the situation super weird after what went down earlier. Remembering the fall on the bed, the boy gets tense and decides to get his wife's attention. Startled, the lady quickly says he can say whatever he wants. Blushing, the woman asks if the master would have some free time to join her for a walk. Hearing that sudden invitation takes the boy completely by surprise. Sweating cold, the blonde makes up an excuse, talking about the harvest festival and farm inspections. Upon hearing that, the young man smiles, remembering that event really was very close to happening. With a gentle look, the hero agrees to accompany his beloved during the inspection. Getting that answer makes the lady extremely happy and relieved. Switching scenes, we see the maids helping the lady of the house put on an outing dress. A little girl fixes the hem of her skirt while the blonde admires herself in the mirror. The maid with glasses asks the team to stay there because she's going to check the boss's clothes. Reaching the hallway, the woman smiles, thinking the boy would already be ready. But her expression shifts to pure anger as soon as she lays eyes on his outfit. Thinking he would look amazing, the hero wears a pirate outfit, saying it is great for a walk. Furious, the maid says it is just a walk and runs after him to change those clothes. They run into the bedroom, completely shattering the silence of the room. Holding the master's hand, the woman drags him while the noble says he knows how to dress himself. Out of patience, she pushes the boy, making him fall sitting on the couch. Adjusting her gloves, the servant gives a scary smile and warns that a lord must dress decently. The old clothes start flying across the room as the woman tears everything off without mercy. Laughing nervously, the hero covers his chest, asking her to just pick the clothes and leave. At this point, the maid mocks him, asking if he was embarrassed by her since, when he was a kid, he was always running around without his clothes. Pulling the boy by the collar, the servant tells him to stay quiet and hurry up. With a violent pull, the employee rips the noble's shirt off, throwing the boy to the floor. However, the woman with glasses covers her mouth with her hand, totally shocked by what she just saw. The hero's body is covered in deep scars, spreading all over his muscular chest. Shaking a lot, the lady stares at those marks and mentally asks what the heck all of that could be. Because of this, the young man pulls his shirt back, trying to hide the injuries while announcing he would dress himself. Stepping closer, the servant gets very worried, wanting to know what he had to go through during all these years. Touching the employee's hand affectionately, the hero apologizes and promises to tell everything when the right time comes. Then the boy begs her to keep this secret far from his beloved wife's ears. Holding her own chest, the woman lets a few tears fall, feeling immense pain for her master's suffering. Wiping her face, she promises that from now on she will be the only one in charge of dressing him, being thanked right away. Switching scenes, we see the young man walking outside in elegant clothes and asking the butler if the carriage is ready. The noble now wears a flawless high-class suit, perfectly matching his lordly posture. Looking at the boy, the old man comments he was afraid he would show up dressed like a bandit to scare the boss lady. Chuckling, the hero confesses that almost happened and praises the intuition of the maid with glasses. At that moment, the mansion door opens, drawing the attention of the two men who quickly turn their heads. The beautiful blonde appears, looking stunning in a dazzling blue dress, and asks if her husband likes her special look. Seeing that scene, the hero is completely paralyzed, his cheeks bright red as he compliments the girl's beauty. The lady thanks him with a sweet smile, while the maid watches everything, deciding to keep that secret to herself. Wasting no time, the couple walks hand in hand toward the large carriage ready to start the trip. A short time later, they arrive at the village, and someone tells the residents that the Lord has finally returned. The lovebirds walk through the market streets, drawing many curious looks from the villagers around them. Several people start greeting the hero with great respect, and he responds with a gentle smile. Getting close to the food stalls, an old family friend is surprised to see how much the little boy has grown. Passing by the shopping district, the young man continues to be very well received by several friendly merchants. But some friends notice the cane and ask about the injured leg, demanding the master take care of himself so he can lead the region. Suddenly, a loud voice echoes through the place, calling the hero boss and making him turn his head in surprise. A strong blonde guy emerges from the crowd, revealing himself to be a great childhood friend of the noble. With much joy, the two partners share a very firm handshake, making up for the lost years. They hug amicably as the blonde confesses he almost did not recognize the boss because of his new look. After hugging his buddy, the resident also gives a brief bow, greeting the owner of the estate. Excitedly, the friend invites the boy to have a drink at the tavern later, as soon as the party is over. Patting his chest, the hero accepts the invitation on the spot, confirming his presence for the drinks. With that, they say goodbye, waving to each other as the couple goes back to walking the sunny streets. Watching the two walk away, the blonde guy smiles satisfied, thinking they make a beautiful lordly couple. Time passes quickly, and at the end of the day, the luxurious carriage returns down the dirt road under a beautiful sunset. Inside the transport, the mood is quite calm, with the lady reading a very thick book and the husband just watching. The young man notices the title on the cover and mentally realizes it is an encyclopedia focused on botany. Striking up a conversation, the hero breaks the silence and gets the attention of his beautiful travel companion. Stopping her reading, the blonde looks up and answers softly, waiting to hear what he had to say. Getting slightly embarrassed, the boy asks if she could teach him about managing the family's lands. Scratching the back of his neck, he admits the girl carried all the weight on her own and now he wants to take on his responsibilities. Completely blushing, the woman hides her face behind the book, listening to her husband's confession, trying to be a better man. Behind the pages, the lady smiles from ear to ear, very proud to see her love becoming someone so reliable. Closing the encyclopedia affectionately, the girl rests the item on her lap, showing a lot of excitement. Leaning forward, the blonde puts on an excited expression and asks if she could be very strict with his lessons. Laughing at the situation, the hero puts his hand on his chest and asks her to go hard without any mercy. The giant carriage finally nears the mansion while the lovebirds keep chatting in a cute way. Later, night falls over the region, lighting up the starry sky above a very busy tavern near the border. Inside the bar, the atmosphere is pure party, with several people talking and drinking happily. Just then, a mysterious figure enters the establishment, calling everyone their ignorant fools. Wiping a glass, the tavern owner looks up, totally confused by that statement. Standing at the door, the red-haired girl states with a firm voice that she is only going to ask once. With a scary look, the young redhead demands to know where the sword monster named Kashu is hiding. The next day, the sun shines bright, illuminating the family's huge mansion during a beautiful afternoon. Inside the library, the quill pen glides quickly across the papers stacked on the wooden desk. Seeing that paperwork, the hero asks if his wife usually deals with this much work, and she says no. Stopping her writing, the blonde turns her head and gets her husband's attention, who promptly asks her to speak. With a calm look, the lady suggests the master give a speech at the festival to celebrate his return. Resting his hand on the table, the boy is surprised, processing the idea of giving a speech to the people of the fief. Thoughtful, the boy remembers his time as a mercenary, where things were resolved differently. In those dark times, warriors just yelled about their final moments before stepping onto the battlefield. The hero reflects that he never had the slightest intention of getting on a stage to speak nicely. With his red eyes glowing, he recalls that his real reason for fighting was much darker. Charging toward the enemies, the young man just wanted to find a target to take all his anger out on. Moving his sword non-stop, the swordsman defeated any opponent that crossed his path. Acting like a fierce hound, the warrior took down countless adversaries without feeling a drop of pity. Being a person so stained by fights, he questions whether he would be worthy of giving a cheerful speech. Snapping back to reality, the boy laughs awkwardly and apologizes for zoning out. Trying to dodge the responsibility, the Lord offers to stand by her side while the boss lady gives the vows. Giving a cute smile, the beautiful woman understands the situation and agrees to take the lead on stage again. Touching her lips, the blonde thinks that just having her beloved by her side is enough to make her happy. Arriving at the big festival, the couple steps onto the stage, and the lady thanks all the residents for their hard work. Wishing them the best, the boss wraps up the speech by asking everyone to enjoy the party a lot. Hearing those words lifts the crowd's spirits, and they start celebrating, making a lot of noise. Satisfied with the result, the young man holds his beloved's hand, and the two decide to enjoy the fair. Walking together through the stalls, the beautiful couple catches the amazed attention of all the villagers. A friendly merchant approaches and offers a bowl of very good, smelling food for the boss lady. Right then, another resident also shows up, offering a large mug of drink for the master to taste. Thanking the people for their kindness, the lovebirds continue their stroll, wishing the village a great event. Suddenly, the beautiful girl's golden eyes widen, totally surprised by something she saw ahead. Grabbing the hero's arm, the young woman points her finger up, asking him to look in that direction. Further ahead, a jester puts on a rare performance, holding the attention of a circle of people. Holding a sharp blade, the performer announces that the next dangerous trick would be swallowing the sword. Putting the metal down his throat, the man shocks the villagers, but the hero just looks bored. Finishing the trick successfully, the clown gets excited applause from the lady, who loved the show. But the Lord mutters something under his breath, kind of ruining the mood and making his wife look a bit confused. Scratching his head, the boy confesses he thought it was normal since he has seen several enemies swallowing swords before. Moving on, the couple passes by a rustic stall promoting a knife-throwing game. The stall owner recognizes the hero and invites him to test his aim, getting the kids very excited. The challenge was quite simple, just needing to hit some of those swinging apples to win a prize. The noble thinks about turning it down, saying it has been a while since he threw anything, but his wife begs him to try. With a cute look, the blonde holds the boy's arm, pointing out that the kids wanted to see his strength. Giving into the pressure, the Lord takes the darts and walks up to the mark while the kids cheer loudly. Laughing, the tent owner tells him not to be nervous, and the warrior focuses his intense gaze on the target. In a quick and violent motion, the boy throws the blades, piercing all three fruits perfectly in the middle. The absurd speed of the attack leaves the merchant sweating cold, while the little ones scream in fascination. With her mouth open, the beautiful wife blinks her eyes, unable to believe her beloved's skill. Realizing he used too much force, the hero gets nervous, thinking he should have pretended to be bad. Scratching his head, the boy gives an awkward smile, deciding to pretend it was all just a lucky shot. But the blonde is amazed by his throws, praising his skill as if he were a true knight. Noticing his wife's excitement, the warrior mentions he is happy to see her enjoying the village party so much. At that moment, the stall merchant steps closer, handing over a very unusual prize for the game's winner. The cheerful man explains that the egg package was a special gift prepared by the guild for the participants. Thanking him for the package, the master decides to pass the reward on to the kids, who celebrate by calling him the best. Watching the scene, the beautiful lady smiles sweetly, saying her husband is a very kind person to the people. The young man confesses he was just reminiscing about the past because he used to love finding a golden egg in those packages. Hearing that makes the girl jump back slightly, completely frozen with embarrassment. Very confused, the hero notices his partner's weird reaction and asks how she could possibly know about that tiny detail. Sweating cold, the woman makes up an excuse, saying he was a famous troublemaker and rumors spread fast. Deep in thought, the young woman looks down, mentally admitting she could never reveal the truth to her husband. She remembers her childhood when she spied on the boy all the time, because she wanted so badly to marry him in the future. Soon, the blonde's thoughts are interrupted by the boy's sweet voice calling her attention. Extending his hand like a gentleman, the hero invites his beloved to enjoy the party in the main square. With her face flushed, the lady of the house flashes a beautiful smile and firmly holds her husband's hand. Night falls, and all the residents gather around a bonfire where a young man holds a torch, hyping up the crowd. The blonde friend thanks the lords for being there, stating the party shines as bright as the boss lady's beauty. The crowd bursts into laughter while the couple smiles, finding the residents' flashy attitude very funny. Raising his hand, the boy asks everyone present to pray for the lasting prosperity of his family's lands. Then the resident announces that now a kissing ceremony between the masters of the region would take place. This sudden statement catches the lovebirds completely off guard, making them share embarrassed looks. The beautiful lady turns as red as a tomato, unable to believe she would have to kiss her husband in front of so many people. The whole square keeps their eyes fixed on the couple, anxiously waiting for the event's romantic moment. The party hype man continues the joke, pointing at the two and getting all the villagers' attention. Putting even more pressure on the situation, the man repeats out loud that the kissing ceremony would start right now. Completely stuck, the two stand still, not knowing how to react in front of so many curious eyes. Demanding some action, the friend mocks their hesitation, making the warrior yell in annoyance at his old buddy. Bursting into laughter, the resident asks the crowd to make a lot of noise and give their leader some courage. Following the command, the entire crowd starts chanting together, asking for a passionate kiss from the lovebirds. With no way out, the hero softly calls his wife's name, apologizing for what he was about to do next. Pulling the blonde by the waist, the master dips her in a very elegant move straight out of a fairy tale. Bringing their faces closer, he leaves the girl with wide eyes, feeling her heart beating fast. The young man whispers he is very sorry about it, explaining the people would never stop chanting if they did not do something. Understanding the situation, the woman smiles gently, accepting her beloved's decision to calm the crowd down. However, the lady holds her husband's face and takes the initiative, giving him a passionate kiss that surprises even the boy himself. The square goes absolutely crazy, with all the villagers cheering and screaming with joy in the warmth of the bonfire. The moon lights up the night sky as voices wish glory and eternal love for the leaders of that place. Far away, the giant mansion rests quietly under the vastness of the starry night after a long festival day. But inside the bedroom, the boss lady is kneeling on the bed, hiding her blushing face in the pillow. Completely in shock, the blonde breathes heavily with tears in her eyes, trying to process what she had done. Remembering the passionate kiss, the girl feels very embarrassed and wonders what she was thinking at that moment. Scared of what her husband might be thinking, she lies down, completely unable to close her eyes and fall asleep. In the other room, the hero stares at the ceiling lying in bed, touching his own lips, also unable to sleep. In another kingdom, a radiant sun illuminates the high walls of an extremely luxurious noble estate. Inside the palace, an elegant hand lifts a teacup decorated with shiny gold details. The blonde man with glasses sips the liquid calmly while listening to his subordinates report. The white-haired woman warns her boss that the Imperial Army forces broke through the border defense lines. Setting the cup on the table, the Lord smiles, commenting that the troops collapsed miserably since the warrior left. With a twisted look, the rich man praises his own strategy alongside a masked ally. In the luxurious mansion, the white-haired secretary tags along with her wealthy master. The woman questions if he is really going to let the lands of Shever fall into the Imperial Army's hands. Sipping his tea, the blonde man explains that those lands only held out this long because of the mercenary. Taking another sip, he says the place can no longer afford to pay the massive debts they owe the kingdom. The Duke gives an evil smile, claiming that with the warrior gone, everything will fall apart very quickly. Placing the cup on the table, the rich guy acts totally cold and calculated. Pouring more tea, the white-haired young lady comments that her boss is really very cruel. Startled by her words, the young man blushes and says he is just doing his duty as a noble. Changing the subject, the serious girl asks if it is safe to let that warrior stay alive out there. Adjusting his glasses, the man chuckles confidently and warns he is no longer a dangerous mercenary. The secretary thinks they should have gotten rid of the boy right away, fearing a future revenge from him. At that point, she remembers the hero's leg being badly injured when he tried to block a super-fast attack. The blonde guarantees that eliminating the warrior would be a huge waste, leaving the woman totally confused. The boss explains they are very similar people, possessing one crucial difference, however. Smiling, the man in the suit points out that his rival is not just driven by money, which is rare for a mercenary. With an evil look, the Lord reveals his plan to keep the swordsman completely under his control. Looking at a large map, he predicts the war will soon hit a stalemate and everyone will need money. The secretary quickly figures out that this will bring even more power and a lot of wealth to her master's companies. The noble's eyes shine with excitement, confirming her reasoning is spot on. Very euphoric, the blonde points to his employee, praising the girl's absurd intelligence. Running toward the young woman, the Duke tries to give his subordinate a very tight hug. But the girl gives the boss a well-aimed slap to the face, shutting down his excitement right then and there. Falling flat on the floor, the rich guy listens to the woman warning him not to try anything funny with her. The sun shines again in the capital, lighting up the Portman family's massive and luxurious mansion. In the bedroom, we see the hero admiring himself in the mirror while the maid adjusts his formal clothes. Suddenly, the door opens, and his beautiful wife enters the room, catching her beloved's attention. The young blonde blushes heavily, feeling completely amazed seeing her husband looking so handsome and elegant. The hero's heart also races wildly when he notices his partner's sweetness. Laughing at the looks on both their faces, the maid with glasses asks the boss to rate the Lord's outfit. Not wanting to get in the couple's way, the little maid runs out of the room as fast as she can. The young man feels totally awkward, scratching his neck as he feels the mood heating up in the room. Outside, the cleaning lady wonders about the boss's relationship, hoping they have not had a fight. The former warrior stammers, explaining he only did that at the festival because of pressure from his old friend. Quickly changing the subject, he asks who the important visitor arriving today would be. The staff member calmly answers that a huge trade delegation from the Western Kingdoms was on its way. Hearing this makes the boy very worried, sweating cold at his servant's words. Smiling, she explains that everyone wants the region's wheat because it has an incredibly wonderful quality. Putting a hand in his face, the boy fears someone from the west might recognize him, causing trouble for the village. He then decides he will personally welcome the visitors, letting his wife rest at home. Arriving at the large train station, the hero seems super tense, his arms crossed as he watches everything. The butler tries to calm the boss down, asking him to just give the normal greetings they practiced earlier. Taking a deep breath, the young man tries to convince himself that nobody from the battlefield would come here just to buy wheat. Touching a small dagger hidden in his coat, he tells himself mentally that he would not have to get his hands dirty today. At that moment, a loud noise takes over the station, announcing the arrival of the big steam engine. The doors open and several people wearing suits start stepping off the train cars onto the stone floor. With a firm posture, the master of the Portman family welcomes all the members of that delegation. The boy keeps talking about the carriages, but suddenly freezes his speech after seeing a certain face. In the middle of the group, a man with a mustache starts sweating cold, totally shocked by the young man's presence there. The warrior's piercing glare stares right through the visitor's soul, proving he recognized him immediately. Trembling with fear, the old merchant stutters, calling the boy by his old title of ruthless mercenary. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Armin, the secretary relays the info that the young boss lady had finally arrived. Desperate, the man in the suit runs through the halls with the employee behind him, saying the girl did not give any notice. Wasting no time, the double doors of the main hall are forcefully pushed open. Opening his arms, the blonde gives a huge smile, welcoming his dear little sister. However, the young redhead shoots her brother a piercing glare, totally annoyed with the situation. This is Valentina, who is simply the largest shareholder of the man's group of companies. Ignoring her ugly face, the blonde picks the girl up in his arms, complimenting how much she has grown lately. But the little redhead does not like that one bit and demands he put her down right away before she burns his face. Scared by the threat, the rich guy quickly sets his sister down with a very goofy expression. Crossing her arms, the girl yells at him, demanding info about the whereabouts of that famous mercenary. Sweating cold, the man with glasses tries to make up an excuse, claiming the warrior is very good at hiding. At this point, the young lady furiously grabs him by the collar, threatening to pull all her shares from the family business. Almost crying, the Duke begs for mercy while the redhead demands he bring the target to her as fast as possible. With her cape swaying impressively, the little master shows she is not there to play around. The girl's gaze is sharp as a blade, proving she will do anything to find the boy. Turning her back, the little redhead warns he has very little time and starts walking toward the hall's exit. Right after, the huge doors are slammed shut, leaving a very tense mood in that place. Kneeling on the floor, the man in the suit listens to the secretary ask if he would really hand over the warrior's location. Looking up, he just asks if the delegation had already been sent off to the mercenaries' lands. The employee confirms but fears the ruthless fighter would never take such an obvious negotiation bait. Smiling wickedly, the blonde guarantees that now, taking on the role of lord, the rival will have no other choice. Changing scenes, we see the huge steam train cutting through the village's large wheat fields. Inside the car, that mustached merchant stays quiet next to his bodyguards. The mood among the Western representatives is pure seriousness, waiting for the final stop of the trip. With a dark look, the old man stares into the void, preparing his demands for the young master of the region. Making a deafening noise, the huge metal machine finally parks at the main stop. Soon, the delegates' elegant shoes touch the station floor as they walk toward the exit. Welcoming the guests, the noble with brown hair and his butler bow politely. Doing his job, the former warrior begins to kindly say he prepared carriages for everyone. However, the old man swallows hard and starts sweating a lot upon recognizing the young man's face. The warrior's eyes glow in a dark red, reminding him of the fierce battles he had fought. Totally paralyzed, the representative stammers, trying to confirm if that man was really the famous monster. But the hero pretends to be worried, asking if the old man was feeling sick or in some kind of pain. Thinking fast, the young man realizes he needs to hide his identity to avoid putting the villagers' lives in danger. Desperate, the chubby guy tries to flee, asking the guards to turn the train around and go home right away. At this point, our hero puts on a goofy smile and politely introduces himself as the great lord of that village. Seeing such a silly attitude, the old merchant gets very confused, doubting his own instinct. The big guy mentally concludes that a guy with this idiot face could never be the ruthless mercenary, because the monster he saw 5 years ago had an empty look capable of terrifying even the strongest soul. Gaining confidence, the arrogant chubby guy raises his hand and violently slaps the young lord's chest. That shocking lack of respect leaves all the residents at the station completely stunned. People start whispering, unable to understand the reason for so much aggression against the village leader. Fallen on the ground, the representative humiliates the boy, calling him bloodless trash and demanding respect. Faced with that unforgivable insult, the warrior gives off a dark aura and begins taking off one of his gloves. In the blink of an eye, the hero slaps the glove right across the old man's face with a force that almost knocks him backward. Looking down at him, the former mercenary challenges the chubby guy to a duel, demanding to restore his stained honor. Furious about the slap, the arrogant representative yells for the guards to bring swords, accepting the challenge on the spot. But at that moment, a gray-haired young man in a wheelchair appears, shouting for them to stop. The hero turns his head, surprised by the interruption, while the chubby guy grumbles in anger at his arrival. Smiling awkwardly, the newcomer tries to apologize for his partner, but the chubby guy warns it is already too late. The gray-haired noble scolds the chubby guy, ordering him to bow his head and apologize to Lord Polo that exact second. Sweating cold, the representative remembers that the sword monster Kasha is a forbidden name to utter, much less cross. At that, he compares the hero's glare with the terrifying creature he saw in the past, shivering with pure terror. Trying to hide his fear, the merchant sighs in relief, suggesting to the wheelchair user named Elric that they move on. But inside, the coward keeps cursing that monster who still strongly haunts his worst nightmares. Out of the corner of his eye, the old man watches our smiling hero, terrified of that seemingly harmless expression. Continuing the trip, the luxurious carriage crosses the fields lit up by an orange sunset painting the skies. Nearing the destination, one of the guides announces they are about to reach the mansion, asking everyone to get ready. Stepping out of the vehicle, the group is greeted by several maids lined up and an elegant woman welcoming them to the city. Smiling kindly, the lady introduces herself as Tyria Portman and says it is a huge honor to host the Western delegates. Knowing it was a long journey, she politely suggests the guests rest first to recover their spent energy. Turning her head, the hostess orders the maid Rhonda to guide the important visitors to their respective rooms. Later, night falls, covering the grand mansion with a starry sky as knocks echo on one of the hallway doors. Relaxing in an armchair, the chubby merchant finds the noise strange, wondering if it was room service at that hour. Walking calmly across the dark rug, a mysterious figure enters the room without caring much for manners. Annoyed, the old man says he does not need anything and tells the visitor to go away to avoid disturbing his night's sleep. However, he freezes upon seeing the hero standing there, calling his name and warning that unfortunately he had to interrupt. Getting a huge scare, the representative falls backward onto the floor with his legs in the air, completely terrified by the surprise. Pointing a trembling finger, the man yells desperately, confirming that guy really was the feared sword monster. Recognizing the boy's dark look, the coward is absolutely certain he is facing the most feared warrior of all time. Holding his cane, the former mercenary confesses that it no longer made any sense to hide his true identity there. Dragging himself backward, the scared man cries, asking why he was doing that, swearing he had already apologized for the slap earlier. Sitting comfortably in the chair, the Lord answers that it was about that day when his family was deeply insulted. Staring at the old man with a sharp look, our hero points out he did not recall accepting any apology coming from him. Changing the subject, the boy tells the chubby guy to get up from the cold floor so they can discuss some important business. Confused, the man wonders what he is talking about, and the warrior reminds him the purpose of the visit was to trade wheat. Regaining his posture, the merchant sits in the chair across from him, creating a very tense atmosphere between the two in the fancy room. Sweating profusely, the chubby guy looks at the boy out of the corner of his eye, terrified of giving the wrong answer and meeting his end. Straight to the point, the hero reveals he had a secret meeting with Lord Yujil before arriving, leaving the other guy shocked. The noble swallows hard, wanting to know what was said, and the hero claims to have received a very interesting political proposal. Being clearer, the boy says the rival wants to buy the entire wheat stock of that region, leaving absolutely nothing behind. Confirming the story, the enemy leader proposed distributing all the grain across the western region using his kingdom's power. Tapping a gold coin on the table, the warrior explains a portion of the distribution fees would be paid to the Portman family. Raising a finger, the old Yujil said as his sole condition that the entire stock be sold exclusively to his kingdom. Trusting the Lord's decision, the rival ended the deal, expecting a wise judgment for the future good of House Portman. Flashing an evil smile, the old leader thought he had guaranteed a monopoly on all the food with that political move. Furious about the revelation, the chubby merchant slams his hands hard on the table, cursing the enemy kingdom with all his might. With his face red with anger, he figures out the rival's silence was just a cover to plot behind his back. Taking advantage of the old man's anger, our hero proposes to close the deal with him right then and there, catching the coward completely off guard. Smiling confidently, the boy sets the same condition of selling the entire stock for the exact price offered by the rival kingdom. Backing down a little, the representative argues he does not have the authority to decide such an absurd amount all on his own like that. Bluffing, the hero suggests using the slap's forgiveness as a condition to end any feud between the two sides. Shaking in his boots, the old man stares at the swordsman's intimidating look, knowing his life depended purely on that answer. Clasping his hands in desperation, the chubby guy begs to adjust the price to 60% of the value proposed by the enemy. Trying to soften the boy up, the old man cries, saying such a massive cut would cause problems since he was the head of the family. Receiving a piercing glare back, the merchant raises the offer to 70%, promising to cover the extra costs. Showing little emotion, the lord demands 75%, keeping the exact perks mentioned earlier. Shaking hands firmly, the two close the deal, sealing the negotiation officially and highly profitably for both. Smiling again, the representative praises the boy's bargaining skills, saying it was an excellent and unprecedented deal. Curious, the old man asks the reason the warrior chose to do business with him out of everyone in the empire. Staring at the old man, the warrior thinks about saying he was picked just because he looked the weakest and easiest target there. But playing it cool, the boy suggests amicably that the deal would serve as a formal apology for what happened. Making one final request, the lord warns he has just one more small condition before signing the contract papers. Confused, the merchant listens closely while the hero warns about the dangers of spreading certain rumors. The former mercenary warns with a dark look that if anyone learned of his presence, the contract would be rewritten with severe consequences. Trembling with fear, the chubby guy swallows hard, realizing the mortal threat if he opened his mouth to tell about the swordsman. Arriving the next day, all the representatives gather in the dining room to finally close the trade agreements. Sitting at the head of the table, the blonde announces with a smile that the Portman family would form a direct partnership with the Imperial Army. Hearing that, our hero starts clapping, congratulating the decision while the ally hides the tension of the moment. Then another noble congratulates the chubby guy named Polo on the achievement, but he merely thanks him a bit awkwardly. Furious at the news, the rival slams his hands on the table, outraged, saying that negotiation made absolutely no sense. Very annoyed, the enemy confronts the hostess, asking if the lord of the house had not given orders about that deal. The arrogant rival insults the lady by calling her a girl, but the blonde quickly cuts him off, demanding to be addressed as madam. Faced with that blunt interruption, the gray-haired man is shocked and totally lost for words. Keeping her posture, the elegant lady introduces herself, revealing she is the current wife of the true lord standing right next to her. Looking coldly, the woman rejects the delegate's attitude, stating he was being extremely disrespectful. Sweating profusely, the rival adjusts his own tie, offering humble apologies for making such a gross mistake. Holding back his ladder, the other allied merchant finds the enemy's humiliation funny, swallowing his own anger dryly. Tired of all that mess, our hero sighs deeply, standing up from his chair to finally wrap up the meeting. Gripping his cane firmly, the young man gets ready to finalize the matters and send the guests back home. Outside, the carriages were waiting while the warrior ordered the guards to escort the nobles safely. Heading back home, the chubby alley looks out the window, admiring the highly profitable contract he managed to sign. Watching the guests leave, the lord relaxes his shoulders, feeling he had finally solved that annoying problem. The couple stand side by side in the sunny garden, watching the luxurious carriage disappear over the horizon of the long dirt road. Then the boy confesses he is impressed with his wife, never imagining she had such a firm and decisive side. Closing her eyes, the blonde smiles sweetly, replying that she simply told the absolute truth during the argument. Returning the compliment, the girl says her husband was also quite smart, catching the warrior totally off guard. Holding the papers, the wife reveals that the conditions announced to the public were different from the real secret deal. Scratching his head, the hero admits he just wanted to hurt the rival's pride because of the enormous arrogance he showed. Satisfied with the outcome, the two turn away from the entrance and slowly walk back into the mansion. Far away, a yellow flag waves strongly in the wind, carrying the grand symbol of a powerful organization. The crest belonged to a massive private residence filled with luxurious details and very impressive architecture. Inside the fancy building, a scandalous scream echoes through the empty halls, breaking all the silence of that environment. Running desperately, a young blonde guy with glasses pulls his own hair, crying and yelling, unable to understand the latest events. The young man complains through tears about having offered great conditions and questions deeply why the hero refused everything. Freaking out completely, the leader jumps with anger, claiming the plan was perfect while his partner tries to calm his nerves. Outraged, the boy cries, accusing the warrior of ruining all his careful planning just for pure amusement. Tantrum, the blonde guy steps wrong, slipping badly on the smooth floor of the mansion's huge luxurious hall. Losing his balance, the poor guy is thrown backward, his arms flailing in the air, about to suffer a painful fall. However, a firm hand grabs his fingers suddenly, stopping his fragile body from crashing violently against the hard floor. Startled, the boy looks up, his heart still racing, trying to figure out what had just happened there. Being saved by the blue-haired assistant, the clumsy leader ends up falling right into her comfortable arms. Sliding across the rug, the woman catches the boss's body very agilely, preventing a tragic workplace accident. Annoyed, the woman gives the young man a proper scolding, telling him to calm down while the blonde just awkwardly apologizes. Switching scenes, hot tea is carefully served inside a beautiful cup decorated with incredible golden details. Calmer, the boss thanks her for the drink, sitting in the armchair, while the trusted assistant checks if he is feeling better. Putting his thoughts in order, the young blonde questions the lord's intentions, highly doubting his actions. Sensibly, the woman suggests that the best way to find out someone's true motivations is by asking directly. Agreeing, the boss realizes there was no other way but to visit and confront the famous warrior face to face. With that, a determined hand reaches for the fancy golden doorknob, ready to begin a new and great journey. At that moment, the young blonde with glasses announces that in this case he will do something and slides open the luxurious hall door to leave. Thinking fast, he figures he would need a good argument, revealing a beautiful hidden golden revolver. Meanwhile, at the imposing Graham family mansion, the sun shines bright in the blue sky of another calm day. Arriving at the location, the chubby merchant greets the silver-haired wheelchair user who welcomes his partner. Curious, the light-haired noble takes a small tied scroll in his hands, wondering what it was about. Quickly, the representative explains that it was a letter sent directly by Lord Elric Portman. Carefully opening the mail, the young man in the wheelchair slides his gloved fingers, reading the written content. Analyzing every word, the silver-haired man lets out a soft sigh, maintaining a very elegant posture while reading. But suddenly, the lord's eyes widen and he chokes on the air, totally shocked by what he was seeing in the document. Bursting into laughter, the elegant young man covers his face with his hand, unable to hold back his amusement at the situation. Calming down, the young man comments that the chubby old guy must have almost passed out from fright when coming face to face with the monster. Smiling from ear to ear, the silver-haired man thanks his partner for doing the huge favor of delivering the letter. Finishing his business, the merchant says he is already leaving, while the host wishes him a safe trip. Alone, the wheelchair user thinks about the missing swordsman, finding it curious he went precisely to the cold region of Wibben. Changing the setting to the frozen lands, a thick layer of snow covers the vegetation of that vast open field. In the middle of the icy forest, the dark barrel of a rifle aims steadily at a target hidden among the trees. Pulling the trigger, a hunter smiles confidently upon landing the shot, being highly praised by his teammates. Running through the snow, the group celebrates taking down a large deer, commenting that they would finally make it out of the rookie phase. Assessing the prey's weight, the men think about bringing the horses to help, but one of them hears a strange noise. Confused, the friend calls the attention of the boy named Derek, demanding he go quickly fetch the mounts in the wagon. Then, the scared hunter puts a finger to his mouth, asking his noisy partners for absolute silence. Gripping the rifle tightly, the young man orders the other two to back away from the prey, creating a very tense atmosphere in the air. Sweating cold, the boy warns he was sensing a dangerous magical presence, ordering everyone to run away immediately. Thinking it is a joke, his buddy laughs in his face, saying that shiver was just the normal winter cold. However, a giant monstrous paw crushes the ground next to the deer, making the duo fall on their butts in the snow. Desperate, the shooter cocks his weapon, telling his friends to get out of the way because the creature was right behind them. Looking up, the rookies face the colossal snout of a mystical wolf drooling right above their heads. With its eyes glowing blue, the monstrous beast lets out a terrifying roar, showing off its enormous fangs. Meanwhile, at the Grand Portman mansion, snow also begins to fall, covering the roof of the beautiful residence. Listening to the reports, the blonde wife sighs worriedly, feeling deeply sorry for the terrible trauma the men experienced. Kneeling on the luxurious rug, the three surviving hunters lower their heads, confessing they ran away in a panic. Being understanding, the lady asks them to have some hot tea, promising to discuss the dangerous matter with the Lord. Turning her face, the hostess politely orders the maid to serve hot meals to warm up the guests. At that moment, an elegant butler pulls a thick book from the shelf, revealing it to be a monster encyclopedia. Walking side by side, the experienced older man compares the survivors' testimonies with the book's records. Getting very serious, the old man with glasses concludes that the invading creature could only be the feared blade wolf. Holding her dress, the lady finds the information strange, recalling that those animals vanished after their leader was defeated. Confirming the story, the butler remembers that alpha monster was the cause of the scar on the hero's neck. With a dark look, the young wife tightens her lips, determined not to let that threat destroy the peace of her home. Changing her tone of voice, the lady states she would not allow anyone to be in danger, ordering the creation of a squad. Without questioning, the loyal servant bows his head, promising to recruit only the most experienced hunters in the region. Before he leaves, the beautiful blonde calls the older man's attention again, showing a lot of concern about the hunt. Putting a finger over her mouth, the young lady asks for absolute secrecy, demanding that her husband not find out about any of it. Confused at first, the older man just agrees to the order, guaranteeing he would guard the secret with his life. The memory shifts to the moment the carriage was ready on the lawn for the hero's trip. Smiling gently, the husband promises to return soon while the wife wishes him a very safe and smooth journey. Watching the vehicle leave, the hostess stands still in the cold wind next to her loyal gray-haired servant. The butler suggests that hiding the truth would hurt the Lord, but she warns the warrior would try to fight while injured. With her golden eyes shining, the girl remembers a distant past where a terrible situation happened right there. In the memory, a little blonde girl cries desperately, reaching out her hand while the young boy charges into danger. In the memory, a giant scary wolf attacks the boy violently, who tries to defend himself holding only a stick. Back to the present, the blonde lady states she would not let the Lord face danger again, asking if everything was ready. At that, the old butler confirms the request, showing the highly equipped elite hunters he had just recruited. Satisfied, the girl starts walking toward the snowy forest, while the servant tries to stop her from joining the group. But the wife answers firmly that it was her duty as a noble to lead those people in such a dangerous place. Sweating cold, the experienced older man understands her side, only demanding that everyone retreat immediately if the monster appeared. Switching scenes, we see the busy commercial district of the city, covered by a beautiful white layer of snow. A rustic wooden sign swings in the icy wind, indicating the entrance to that region's central hospital. Inside, a very friendly doctor examines the hero's injured leg, praising the excellent recovery. Excited, the young man asks if he could walk without the cane now, but the doctor asks him to keep using it just to be safe. Taking the opportunity, the experienced healer asks if the old scar on the boy's neck had left any lasting effects. Touching his nape, our hero smiles calmly, explaining he was treated very well by a rather famous doctor back then. Remembering the past, the doctor comments that the wounds caused by the blade wolf were extremely difficult to heal. The noble with red eyes is surprised to hear from that man that his own father desperately begged for his life. Laughing nervously, the old healer recalls that was the first time he ever saw the boy's father so pale with fear. Having the image of an always scary man in his head, the hero sweats cold, admitting it was very hard to imagine such a scene. Before saying goodbye, the doctor seriously warns the swordsman to avoid any heavy physical effort in the coming days. Leaving the office, the heavy wooden door is opened, revealing the freezing weather and the heavy snow falling outside. Walking calmly down the street, the lord in the blue overcoat is watched by a tall soldier who slowly approaches. Hearing his name called, the hero turns his head confused, stopping in the middle of the snow to see who it was. Recognizing the guy, the boy is shocked to see his old childhood friend named Luton standing right in front of him. Flashing a huge smile, the bearded warrior calls our hero captain, feeling very happy about the unexpected reunion. Without thinking twice, the big guy steps forward, giving the lord a tight hug, saying he came running as soon as he got the letter. Curious, the young man asks if his friend had joined the Royal Knights, and the big guy brags, showing off his official sword. With that, the hero suggests they go to some bar to drink and catch up, offering to pay the whole bill for the night. But at that exact moment, a messenger comes running down the street, announcing he had a very urgent delivery to make. Panting from exhaustion, the scared soldier says it was a rescue request coming directly from the Portman family. Immediately, the lord's expression turns to pure despair, not understanding the meaning behind such a serious alert. Nervous, the boy explains that the blonde lady, the leader's wife, needed urgent help on the dangerous snowy mountain. Hearing that his family was attacked by magical beasts, the warrior gets a piercing glare, taken over by an uncontrollable rage. Far away in the freezing mountains, the sounds of weapons firing echo loudly, completely shattering the silence of that lonely landscape. A pack of monstrous wolves with glowing blue eyes fiercely advances through the snow, hunting the humans in their territory. Falling back, the elite hunters try to hold their formation, firing their heavy weapons at the furious animals. With perfect aim, one of the shooters hits the wolf square on, dropping the monstrous beast onto the ice-covered ground. Covering their escape, the soldiers beg the blonde lady to run as fast as possible, far away from the battlefield. Desperate, the little maid points to an abandoned cabin in the middle of the woods, suggesting they hide there. Gathering all their strength, the duo runs across the wooden porch, quickly entering the shack to find a safe refuge. Outside, the squad leader orders the men to light glowing mana stones to distract the wild monsters. Holding the glowing crystals, the team runs in the opposite direction, acting as live bait to protect their beloved leader. The risky plan works, and the entire pack runs right past the cabin, chasing the brave soldiers through the snowy hills. Hiding in the dark, the noblewoman and her maid shiver from the cold, wrapped in blankets, hoping all that danger would go away. Feeling guilty, the wife apologizes for putting the little girl in danger, but the girl claims she followed on her own. Trying to be strong, the little helper promises a rescue team would soon arrive to save them both from that terrible nightmare. Smiling with relief, the young blonde confesses that despite the risk, she did not regret keeping that whole mission hidden from her husband. Seeing her boss's kindness, the sweet maid cannot handle the pressure and starts shedding tears of pure worry in the dark room. Cutting through the blizzard, our hero rides at high speed next to his old bearded friend toward the imposing mountains. With his heart in his throat, the lord wonders why his wife threw herself into such a lethal place all alone like that. Seeing the panic on the hero's face, the big guy tells the captain to stay calm and trust that the rescue would be a success. Taking a deep breath, the swordsman agrees with his partner, trying to control the anger building up inside his chest. Then, our hero's mind travels to the past, remembering the sad day the monsters attacked his small childhood village. Then, the warrior's mind wanders, remembering the great mystical wolf that attacked him violently during his sad childhood. Returning to the present, a soldier cries in regret, sharing that he left his captain behind to go get help. Grabbing his friend's shoulder, the bearded partner swears he would never again let our hero fight alone in that cold place. Running through the snowstorm, the group spots a desperate hunter waving from afar, asking for help for the team. With that, the big knight charges forward on his mount, calling out to the man to understand what was going on there. Getting closer, the lord grabs the soldier by the shoulders, crying as he asks about the whereabouts and safety of his wife. Very nervous, the boy points the way, revealing the lady was hiding in a cabin while they acted as bait. Feeling a huge sense of relief, the young swordsman asks the shooter to guide him to the rest of the squad so he can save all of them. However, the bearded knight stops his captain's advance, taking on the heavy responsibility of rescuing the soldiers. Keeping his posture, the partner says he would bring the men back safely, telling the warrior to go quickly and protect his beloved. Smiling confidently, the big guy asks for a vote of confidence, stating he is no longer that cowardly youth from the distant past. Recognizing his buddy's bravery, the hero agrees with the plan, praising him for becoming a true knight. Immediately, the partner runs, calling the surviving soldier to lead the way toward the dangerous battlefield. Turning his head, the hero gains a look of pure determination, entirely focused on getting to the defenseless lady quickly. Facing a brutal blizzard, the boy runs as fast as he can, cutting through the freezing winds with great agility. His steps sink into the soft snow, slowing his run, but the noble does not slow down for a single second during the trip. Shielding his eyes from the storm, he laments the huge number of beasts in the area, hoping everyone stays safe and alive. After an enormous effort, the young man finally spots the old abandoned wooden cabin right in the middle of the large woods. Without a second thought, the lord busts down the heavy wooden door, panting and fighting against the strong draft of freezing air. Absolutely desperate, the boy yells his woman's name with all his might, looking into every corner of that dark place. Huddled in a corner, the girls freeze in shock, trying to figure out how the noble got to the mountain so fast. Walking with long strides, the swordsman ignores his exhaustion, going straight to the bed where the poor girls were lying. Then, the warrior pulls his beloved into a very tight hug, feeling his heart beat fast with pure relief and gratitude. Surprised by the action, the blonde questions the reasons that led her husband to personally come to a place full of danger. Holding his wife very tenderly, the man tries to assess all the stress he went through, thinking he had lost his family. Changing his tone, the boy scolds his wife, demanding explanations for why she took on such a high risk without telling him anything. Looking down, the young woman confesses she just wanted to prevent the injured hero from returning to the terrible combat zone. Looking quite upset, the noble questions if his partner trusts his great skills so little. Seeing the pain on her beloved's face, the lady hugs him very tightly, completely denying that statement of distrust. Accepting the apology, the hero earnestly asks the blonde to promise never again to jump into danger alone like that. Feeling the warmth of the hug, the beautiful woman closes her eyes, smiling and sealing the promise with all her love and sincerity. Watching the cute scene, the little maid smiles from ear to ear, happy to see the beautiful couple working things out after the scare. But the romantic mood is broken by the sound of heavy footsteps coming from the porch, immediately putting the warrior on high alert. Excitedly, the sweet helper announces the hunters had returned after hearing the noise of the heavy door being opened. Smiling at the survivors, the Lord praises the efficiency and hard work of the brave men in that merciless blizzard. However, the swordsman's look suddenly gets serious as he notices that someone very important was missing from the squad. Worried, the hero asks the rookies where the captain who was leading that rescue mission on the dangerous mountain was. With their heads down, the soldiers explain the leader ordered the team to retreat, deciding to face the massive pack entirely on his own. Blaming himself, the hero slams his hand on the table, cursing the idiotic sacrifice of his old battle partner. Stepping up, the Lord orders them to take the girls to a safe place, stating he was going back to get his stubborn friend. At that exact moment, the young wife firmly grabs the sleeve of his suit, stopping his sudden advance into the blizzard. Looking back, the warrior sees the look of terror on the blonde's face, as she confesses she is terrified of seeing him hurt again. With her eyes full of tears, the beautiful lady holds her husband's hand, asking him to swear he would return in one piece and well alive.